Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be back here at NDN with the particular privilege of introducing a good friend of mine who really doesn't need much of an introduction. Many of you have probably had the opportunity to work with him in the past as he's founded and led the Americas Project at the Center for American Progress, or during his time as the Latin American advisor to the then candidate Obama, both on the campaign trail and later as part of his transition team. Others may have known him while he worked with Chairman Lee Hamilton in Congress. In fact, it is difficult to find a time in Dan's career when he has not been working in one way or another to deepen the ties between the United States and Latin America. During my own time working on behalf of the Panamanian government, Dan was an indispensable part of the team we worked with in mapping out our cooperation in a variety of initiatives. I know that his thoughtful analysis and determination have made him one of the best allies our region has. Today, as a special assistant to the President and Senior Director for Western Hemisphere Affairs, Dan Restrepo is responsible for crafting and implementing U.S. policy in the hemisphere. No small feat when you look at the challenges and distractions faced with both the United States and our region in the recent past. Whether it's promoting increased commercial relations to buffer the effects of worldwide economic meltdown, or addressing the nefarious impact of the transnational crime and violence that plagues so many of our countries, Dan's tireless efforts in searching for solutions have not gone unnoticed. Nowhere is his influence more apparent than in President Obama's recent visit to Latin America. The ability to recognize the strategic importance of the countries visited, and moreover, to stand fast when it was suggested that the trip be postponed because of military operations in Libya, speaks volumes not only of Dan's insight and tenacity, but of the crucial role he played in promoting, at times when within his own government, the need to strengthen the partnership between the United States and the countries of Latin America. And so it's my honor and pleasure to present my great friend and a great friend of Latin America, Dan Restrepo.
Thank you very much to Nelson, to Lappy, to NDN, in particular to that overly gracious introduction to Vice President Lewis. Again, it's an honor to have been introduced by you. It's an honor to be here with all of you today. As Nelson noted, I'm going to give an overview of the President's trip, but I'm also going to overstep my brief a little bit to wrap that into, because the President's trip was about underscoring the work we've been doing over the course of the last 2 years in the region. And I'm actually going to start a little earlier in March with the visit of President Calderon to Washington because of the importance of the relationship, as Nelson noted, between the United States and Mexico. It was the 5th time that the two presidents have gotten together since the president met as president-elect with Felipe Calderon in Washington, the only leader with whom he met as president-elect. And I also think it underscores the continued engagement that this president has had with the Americas from very early on, again, from January 12th of 2009, when he first sat down with Felipe Calderon at the Mexican Cultural Institute here in Washington, through the Summit of the Americas, which he attended less than 100 days into his presidency, and through the various two trips to Mexico, through numerous bilateral meetings with presidents from around the region who've come to Washington to sit down with the president to tackle the real challenges facing people throughout the region. This is a president who has been engaged from the beginning because he understands the importance of the Americas to the United States. And perhaps in a description that could stand as something of a mission statement for LAPI, I'm also going to start with the words of the president, oftentimes because I find that he says things a lot better than the rest of us do, those of us who work for him. In speaking in Santiago on March 21st and laying out his vision in the Americas, he said in part, "This is the Latin America that I see today, a region on the move, proud of its progress, ready to assume a greater role in world affairs. And for all these reasons, I believe that Latin America is more important to the prosperity and security of the United States than ever before. With no other region does the United States have so many connections, and nowhere do we see that more than in the tens of millions of Hispanic Americans across the United States who enrich our society, grow our economy, and strengthen our nation every single day." It is that interconnection, an interconnection that is perhaps most profound with our closest southern neighbor, Mexico, which brings with it the riches and challenges that the president and President Calderon worked on March 4th and have worked on each day of his presidency. That underscore the manner in which this president has worked with the Americas, and I think also crystallizes the themes of the trip itself. There were 4 key themes to the trip: the importance of the Americas for the United States. The mere act of going underscored that at the time that we went, with the enforcement actions beginning in Libya, with the traumatic aftermath in Japan, with the first of many showdowns in terms of keeping the government open, looming in the background. There were a number of commentators, thankfully not folks of influence within the administration, who criticized the president for going to Latin America. The act of going underscored the importance the region has, in his view, for the United States, as I noted a moment ago when quoting him, in the economic sphere, in the commercial sphere, in security, on climate and energy challenges, on education and innovation issues. One of the things that was most remarkable about the president's interactions with each of the 3 presidents that he sat down with during the course of his trip was the resonance of the president's State of the Union message for those presidents in their own countries, of the challenges that each of those countries faces in addressing education and innovation issues that are important to taking the next step economically and developmentally in their countries. Whether it was in his interactions with President Rousseff, President Piñera, President Funes, all of them commented on the resonance of that message for them and their daily governance, and also opened the door for us, for the president, to lay down a challenge for the Americas, the 100,000 strong challenge, if you will, to increase academic exchanges between the United States and the countries of the Americas to 100,000 in each direction by the end of the decade. Today, it's roughly 100,000 total, 110,000 net. The connectivity, again, the power of proximity, as Secretary Clinton has described it, gives us a comparative advantage in working on issues with our partners in the Americas. And education and innovation is one of those areas that all of the presidents that we sat down with recognize the importance of growing that relationship with the United States. And President Obama meeting that challenge, seeking to partner with countries in the region and the private sector, both here in the United States and around and throughout the Americas, to deepen the educational and innovation ties to make the Americas as a whole more competitive, globally competitive, was one of the major themes in the trip. Also, the trip was designed to highlight pragmatic leadership in the Americas. Each of the presidents that we visited are in a tradition now of pragmatic leadership, focused on addressing the challenges that face their countries today, not fighting ideological battles of the past, but rather focusing on what has to happen to make their country a better place, a more globally competitive place, and a more globally interconnected place. All partners and growingly capable partners for the United States to do that same work with them. It was also the trip was also meant to highlight the president's engagement and the administration's engagement in the Americas to date, a series of partnerships for progress to, again, address these major challenges, be it the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas, which the president laid down as a signature initiative at the Summit of the Americas in April of 2009, and which typifies a new way of doing business for the United States. Typically, the U.S. president shows up at the Summit of the Americas with the big idea that everyone is going to sign up to and do it our way. The president went to Trinidad and Tobago and offered a different way of doing business, which was laying out a challenge in the framework of shared responsibility, which requires not just the United States assuming more responsibility for our own actions on a whole sphere of issues, but also countries in the region stepping up to the challenge in the region to work problems that face and to seize opportunities that lie in front of our populations. ECPA, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas, is a flexible partnership. Different sets of countries coming together to work on different particular issues, whether it's energy efficiency, biofuels, climate adaptation, a number of different challenges where different countries in the region both have varying levels of interest, varying levels of applicability to them, and varying levels of capabilities to confront these challenges alone and collectively. ECPA was and is an invitation to work these problems together in dynamic partnerships that have different membership, if you will, based on the challenge being worked or the opportunity being worked. In each of the 3 stops of the president's trip, in Brazil, we took a next step on biofuels to work on partnership for aviation, the use of biofuels in aviation under the rubric of ECPA. In Chile, opened a new glacier research center, given the importance of and the impact of permanent glacial melt on clean water supply in the high Andes, an increasingly prominent challenge for countries in the region. In El Salvador, on ECPA, we established with the Salvadoran government a regional deforestation project to counter deforestation in Central America and Mexico. Again, highlighting ongoing work that we are doing in partnership with countries throughout the region. Also on citizen security, which I will largely leave to Roberta for a little later this morning. But the president both highlighted the work we are doing through the various citizen security partnerships in the Americas, with the Merida Initiative, with the Central American Regional Security Initiative, CARSI, the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, CBSI, with the follow-on, the successor plan, if you will, to Plan Colombia. How we are working each of those in partnership on a kind of bilateral basis, but also laying down a challenge to the region and an offer to Central America as it works to come up with a regional security strategy under the auspices of SICA, under the integration mechanism, that the United States and other countries, Canada, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Spain, the European Union, the Inter-American Development Bank, are coming together in a Central American citizen security partnership to offer to work, again, in partnership, making sure that we're pooling resources and coordinating resources in a way that maximizes the collective effort, again, utilizing increasingly capable partners like Colombia, like Chile, who are focused on lending assistance and technical expertise and sharing their own lessons for countries in the region, and particularly in Central America, where citizen security is such a challenge. The president also focused on the democratic experience in Latin America, both the positive aspects of that democratic experience and the lessons it has for parts of the world that are undergoing a tremendous change today in North Africa, that the consolidation of the democratic transitions in countries, again, for example, Brazil, Chile, and El Salvador, underscoring that there are lessons that the Americas have to offer about how you successfully make the transition from dictatorship to democracy, how you do it while also increasing the positive global connectivity of your economies, and how that global connectivity can benefit an increasing percentage of your population. The lessons of the Americas for the rest of the world was an important message throughout the president's trip. To go very briefly into the country by country and then open it up to questions, in Brazil, the president both in his interactions with the government of Brazil, the Brazilian private sector, and the U.S. private sector engaged in Brazil, and then with the Brazilian people directly in a series of events in Rio, was able to underscore, A, the importance of Brazil for the United States, B, Brazil's global emergence and leadership and our embrace thereof. The president has been, from the earliest days of his administration, favoring the kinds of global reforms, global architecture reforms, for example, embracing the G20 as the preeminent global economic forum that has given countries like Brazil an increasing voice at the table on the biggest challenges facing the world today. Through IMF shareholder reform, an issue that perhaps gets a little less attention than the G20, but one where the President and Secretary Geithner in the United States played a very important role in ensuring that Brazil became the IMF's 10th largest shareholder, when perhaps other countries weren't as enthusiastic about that occurrence. The energy and energy security is clearly an important issue for this president. It was an important part of the dialogue he had with President Rousseff, with the private sector, and with the Brazilian people, expressing very clearly the U.S. interest in being a strategic energy partner with Brazil, setting in motion a strategic energy dialogue between the U.S. government and the Brazilian government to address the whole range of energy issues, from pre-salt to biofuels and all points in between, of how the U.S. and Brazil can work together in a way that is mutually beneficial in these areas, mutually beneficial for our two countries and for the region. Also elevating the relationship, the structures of the relationship, if you will. There's an existing global partnership dialogue between the Secretary of State and the Foreign Minister of Brazil that touches a wide range of issues. In the course of the President's visit, we also created an economic and financial dialogue between the finance ministries and the central banks, and the aforementioned strategic energy dialogue, to ensure that across the entirety of the U.S. and Brazilian government, departments and agencies are working together on the principal challenges and principal opportunities that we have in the bilateral relationship. Moving on to Chile. Again, Chile presents in terms of the success story of a free trade agreement with the United States and the beneficial economic effects that has had in a partner country. The Chilean experience with global commercial connectivity also underscores the positive nature that those kinds of connections can have for economic well-being, economic stability, and political and democratic stability in countries in the Americas. Chile has hard-earned experience in disaster response that we took the next step in promoting signing an agreement for FEMA and its Chilean counterpart to work these issues together, both for mutual benefit but for the benefit of third countries. Also pointing to the very important work being done in among defense ministries in the Americas on cooperation for military support for civilian disaster response, growing out of the lessons learned from the tremendous work that was done in the immediate aftermath of the earthquake in Haiti in January of last year, and the continuing work that countries in the Americas, through their participation and membership in MINUSTA, the UN Stabilization Mission in Haiti, are engaged in to help create the conditions where we have just seen a successful election in Haiti, and the opportunity that comes with a new government with a mandate to move forward the development work that is so vital for Haiti's future. That election was made possible through diplomacy and hard work by the Organization of American States, by CARICOM, by key partners in the region, particularly the Brazilians, the Canadians, the United States, Mexico, others coming together to ensure that a process was transparent and reflected the will of the Haitian people. It was an issue, Haiti and the way forward was an issue that was discussed at some length with both President Rousseff and President Piñera. In Chile, we also underscored the importance of defending and protecting endangered civil society. The Chileans have stepped up as one of the first contributors to a global fund to help protect endangered civil society. In too many countries, including countries in the Americas today, civil society is under pressure from governments who are passing laws to limit their funding. The president, in talking about the democratic experience in the Americas, underscored that while tremendous strides have been made, work remains to be done, that there is a shared responsibility in the Americas through the Inter-American Democratic Charter, through the Organization of American States Charter, for the collective defense of democracy, not only actions by countries to protect democracy and abide by the rules of democracy at home, but also to step up and be heard and voice when it is not respected in fellow states in the Americas. That was an issue that was discussed at some length, both with President Piñera and in the context of the president's speech in Santiago, the abiding responsibility that we all share, not because the U.S. says so, but because we have all signed up in the Americas to defend core democratic values wherever they are infringed upon, where there are violations of the separation of powers, where media freedoms are restricted, where majoritarian policies are put in place that do not respect the rights of minorities in the political systems in countries in the Americas. There is a responsibility to stand up and to be heard and to take actions when necessary as a group. It's something that the president has been championing from the very early days of his administration around the world and in the Americas, and that we will continue to do. In El Salvador, the focus, in addition to the obvious security challenges in Central America writ large, and the need for the United States, as has been commented or noted by the president on numerous occasions in his interactions with President Calderón and other leaders in the region, for us to assume our responsibility to cut off illegal weapons flows from the U.S. To points south, to cut off the flows of illegal cash and the misuse of the financial system in the United States and elsewhere by transnational criminal organizations. President highlighted the $10+ billion request for demand reduction in his FY12 budget, underscoring that we take very seriously the need to reduce drug demand in the United States. Also, El Salvador is one of the 4 countries in the world chosen to highlight and to start implementing the president's new development policy of the Partnership for Growth, to work in partnership with countries around the region, around the world, who are on the cusp of being emerging economies, where we sit down in partnership with governments, civil society, private sector in those countries to examine what the constraints to growth that are particular to those countries are, and to help devise policy responses that aren't made in Washington, but rather made in partnership to address those constraints for growth, to unleash the economic potential of countries like El Salvador, to create real economic opportunities so that the young people in particular in countries like El Salvador have something to choose from other than migration or engaging in illicit activities, but rather have real economic opportunities, a point that President Funes has made both when he first visited the president in the Oval Office last March, and then again in the context of the president's visit to El Salvador in March of this year. Finally, immigration was obviously an issue that was discussed in El Salvador in particular, President underscoring his commitment to moving forward on comprehensive immigration reform and creating a system here in the United States, which we frankly do not have today, that respects our tradition of laws and our tradition of being a nation of immigrants, and the need for a bipartisan coming together with Republicans and Democrats in Congress coming together with the president to work on this challenge, understanding that it is not just a challenge that affects us here at home, but one, our system has significant effects on countries throughout the Americas. Again, this has been a topic of much discussion with presidents, particularly President Calderón and our Central American colleagues who come visit the president, but one that it has been and will continue to be an important part of the president's agenda in the Americas is working to address a broken immigration system in a way that, again, respects our tradition and of being a nation of laws and a nation of immigrants. So I think with that, I will open it up to questions, having given that overview of where we stand today in the Americas and after the president's trip.
Thank you, Dan.